Okay. So before we begin, doubts, confusion, question. If there's anything that you haven't understood that you would want me to repeat, please let me know. Okay. So there are a couple of topics in storage that we need to cover today. Okay. The first one that we need to talk about is basically called RDM. Okay. This is called raw device mapping. Now, why do we need an RDM? Okay, let's talk about that. So when you had a physical environment, so you had a physical node, and this is again a physical node, for example. And then what you have is a shared storage. Okay. Then what the storage guys would do is they would carve out a LUN and they would present the LUN to the physical machines. Okay. Then on this physical machine, you would configure a cluster. So for example, you had options wherein you could configure a Windows failover cluster. Okay. So in clustering, what would basically happen is that the same drive is mounted on both the machines. The intention is that if one of the node goes down, for example, if you had a SQL service, which was installed on this drive, it would actually fail over to this node. This is what would happen, and this is what the intention is when you set up a cluster. Now, few folks would like to do this on a VMware platform. Okay. They would like to have a Windows failover cluster, but now instead of a physical machine, you have two virtual machines. So you have a VM01 and you have a VM02, and they would like to set up, let's say that, Windows 2019 is installed on both the machines and they would like to set up a Windows failover cluster. Okay. So here are a couple of options, via which this can be achieved. So the first option is when you have a shared storage. So from the shared storage, what will you do is that you will carve out a LUN and you would present the LUN to both the ESXIs on which they are residing. Okay. Then from the ESXi, you will basically pass on the raw LUN to the virtual machines. This is what RDM is. So you are passing the raw LUN, which is presented to the ESXIs to the virtual machine itself. And this is basically called RDM. Okay. So RDM is now basically used when you have a cluster requirement. So for example, if you want to set up cluster and wherein the application cluster or the operating system cluster suggests in their documentation that you need to bring an RDM, then this is important. Then you would be using RDM. The second option is if you want to run low-level SCSI commands. Okay, if you want to run low-level SCSI commands, then you would like to have an RDM. What do you mean by a low-level SCSI command? So for example, let's say that you have an HP storage, which is 3 par. Okay. Now to manage HP storage, you have a management software. Okay. Now this software needs to execute few commands, which are basically called low-level SCSI commands. Okay. If you install this software on a virtual machine, which has normal hard drives, which has normal VMDKs, the low-level SCSI commands cannot be executed over here. So for that, you need an RDM. Okay. So basically, it depends on the application or it depends on the solution that you are planning to implement, that whether that documentation talks about it or not. Now, you need to always refer to the vendor's documentation. So for example, you have an application Veritas, or if you have any other application Windows or any other custom application, VMware is not responsible to maintain or to update that documentation. It is the responsibility of Veritas, it is the responsibility of Windows to provide you a documentation that how their application can run on VMware platform. Okay, but because VMware would not have one, they would have so many vendors that they have to cater to. So generally, it is the vendor's responsibility to get the documentation updated. You need to follow that documentation and then set up an RDM. Okay, this is what you will need to do. So in a nutshell, if you need an RDM in today's world or in today's age, the first reason is basically that you want to have a cluster. Okay. And the second option is that if you want to run low level SCSI commands. Okay. If I was giving you training 10 years back, then there would have been a third option also that could be performance. If you want more performance, then VMTK might not be able to give you and RDM would be able to give you. But in today's world, this option is no longer applicable. So in today's world, if you are running an RDM, these are the general use cases that why you would be connecting to it. Okay. Now, when I talk about RDM, it is basically of two types. There is something called as a virtual RDM, and then there is something called as a physical RDM. Yeah. Virtual RDM means that this will participate in the snapshot process. Okay. And physical RDM is that you will not participate in the snapshot process. Okay. This works like a persistent hard drive. You remember when I was teaching you the hard drive options? So we had dependent, independent, persistent, and independent, non-persistent. So this basically behaves like an independent persistent. This is what the two types of RDMs are. Okay. Now, let me show you quickly on how do you attach an RDM and what would happen to the virtual machine. Okay. So let's take an example over here. I have a Windows 7 32-bit machine. Okay. Let me power on this machine. And while it is getting powered on, you would see on the ESXi that when I choose my adapters over here, there are a couple of LUNs that I have not formatted till now. Those are still in the raw state and they basically come up in the not consumed. You see over here, they basically come up as not consumed over here. Okay. So now I will be presenting this LUN directly to the virtual machine. This is what my intention is over here. Okay. How would I do that? I would go to the virtual machine. Let me log into the operating system over here. Okay. Now you will click on the edit option over here and you need to add a new RDM disk. This is what I'm trying to do. Okay. When I add an RDM disk, all the unformatted volumes that you have in your environment, they will basically be listed over here. So right now I have got two volumes that are only presented to the ESXi. However, they have not been formatted and they have not been carved out into a data store. So that is why when I'm trying to attach an RDM, console shows me two options. It shows me that you have got two RDMs which are still not formatted. So both these RDMs are available to be used. Sorry, both these LUNs are available to be used as RDM. Okay, this is what it means over here. Now you can choose any one over here. So for example, I'll choose that 190 GB. Okay, I'll hit the OK button. And now you see over here, I am attaching a new RDM. Now, if you look at the space, this cannot be increased nor this can be decreased because this is a fixed space of the RDM of 190 GB. So there is no changes that can be made over here. Okay. And here is the option that I was talking about from the compatibility point of view. What is the compatibility that you would like to have? So your RDM can be of a physical mode or it can be a virtual mode. Physical means you are not participating in the snapshot. Virtual means that you are participating in the snapshot. This is what it means over here. Okay. You'll hit the physical option over here, hit the OK button, and then it would give me an error for PBM. Okay. Error for PBM. I think I know what to do over here. Give me a minute. Okay, this is not started. I need to start the service. That is why that message was coming up. Let's wait for a minute. Okay, so once this service goes through, then I will try attaching the RDM again. And then when we will go to the operating system, so for example, if you would go over here, and if you run CMD right now in the disk management, you would see that, currently there is only one drive over there. Okay, there is only disk 0 over here. So after attaching that RDM, you would see a new drive will be available. Okay, so it started successfully. Thank you. Let me try it again over here. Okay, so you go back, attach an RDM, 190 GB, hit the OK button. I am trying to attach it as a physical RDM. That is what my intention is. I'll hit the OK button. Okay, and now it goes through. Okay. And now you would see over here that, I've got a 190 GB RDM. You hit the next button and quickly format and create a volume over here. Okay. Now I am formatting the LUN directly. That was a raw LUN. It hadn't been formatted, and I am doing it now with NTFS on Windows. That is what I'm doing. And now it gets an E partition. Now, when I come to the E partition, and let's say I'll create a dummy file over here. Okay, I'll call it hello, a dummy file that I have. Okay. So now let me quickly show you that, it has no impact on the snapshot. So if you go over here and, you do like before snapshot, the same thing that we did earlier. If you come over here, you do the same thing before snapshot. Okay. You come back over here, go to snapshot, you take a snapshot, take a non-memory snapshot. Okay, this would go through. Once the snapshot is connected, now you create another folder over here. You call it as after snapshot. You do the same thing on the E drive as well. And you call it as after snapshot. Okay. Now you revert to the snapshot. The VM will go down as expected. We know the reason. When the VM goes down, I'll quickly power it on again. Let the operating system boot up. It might complain that the Windows did not power off properly last time. Okay, you go back over here, pull up the command prompt. Okay, sometimes this volume might lose, the E drive, but that's Generally, it doesn't happen that way, but sometimes it does. So here you would see that after snapshots folders are gone. And here, if you try attaching it, okay, it says refresh the console. Okay, let me try refreshing the console and see if it makes any difference. Okay, then restart this management or restart your computer. Okay, now this is Windows 7. This is too old. So let me try this again. But it generally should work theoretically. I mean, I don't see a reason that why it would not work. Could be some bug with Windows 7, but with Windows 2019 or any other operating system, it should go through as fine. And then you would see theoretically all the files which are there on the RDM disk that should still be there. That should not have any concerns. So that would basically prove that RDM, the physical RDM, does not participate with the snapshot. Now the next thing is when you are setting up a cluster, you might need to share the RDM. Okay, you might need to share the RDM with a couple of machines. So let's say that you have over here a VM1 and then you have a VM2. You have an RDM that you have attached to VM01, and now the same RDM needs to be attached over here as well. Okay. So when you have attached an RDM, okay, that RDM will not be visible to the other machine because RDM can be used once. It cannot be used multiple times. Okay. Then how do you attach the RDM? Okay, and how do you share the disk? There is a concept behind it. I would like to explain you that concept so that it becomes um, easy for you to understand. Let me quickly verify this management. I hope it got the volume now. Come on, come on. No, no, no. Still giving the problems. Okay, let me try something else over here. I'll power on this machine. No compatible host found. Okay, this is on a different port group. That's the reason. Let me switch it and bring it to a supported port group. Okay, you become to VM fraud, simple. Now let me power on the machine. Allow me a minute, please. Okay. So what I would do is I would delete the snapshot. I don't know why this is not getting recognized over here. And I'll attach the RDM over there, and then you should see those files still over there. That is the second test, that I wanted to show you, but let's do it this way if this is not going through. So basically, when you delete an RDM from a virtual machine, the files which are there on the RDM will still be there. They're not going to go away. Okay. So what would happen over here is when you would go over here and when you would say that, remove device and data. So you're basically saying remove device and data, hit the OK button, but it is not actually taking away the data. Okay. You would see it over here. So now you have a snapshot. Let me delete the snapshot over here. I don't know why we have a snapshot over here. Let me open the disk management. So while this is going through, when you have a hard drive or when you have an RDM, which is connected to one virtual machine, if you want to connect that same hard drive and the same RDM with another virtual machine, then you are basically sharing the same RDM and the same, hard drive to the other VM as well. Now, a hard drive and a RDM, they are basically connected to a controller. Okay. So whether can you share a hard drive or an RDM with any other virtual machine depends on the controller settings. The kind of the controller to which the virtual machine's hard drive is connected will determine that whether can you share a virtual machine or an RDM with any other VM or not. Okay. So it is basically the controller who decides that whether can you share or you cannot share. Okay. How would you see that? So if you go over here on VM03, and if you hit the edit button, you see there is a hard drive one. But if you see carefully, it says that this is connected to SCSI controller 0. And on SCSI controller 0, this is the first hard drive. Okay. How many hard drives you can have on a controller? If you click on the SCSI controller 0, you would see over there, come on, come on. Hmm, what is wrong with it? Let me try a different VM. So you see that, it can have 16 hard drives. So one SCSI controller can have 16 hard drives and you can attach 4 SCSI controllers. This is what you can do. So you could have up to 60, 64 hard drives on every virtual machine. That is what you can do over here. Okay. Now, this SCSI controller that you have over here determines that whether can you share your hard drive or not. So you see the SCSI controller. Just give me a minute over here. Okay, so basically this SCSI controller determines that whether can you share the hard drive or not. So if you see the SCSI controller over here, this has a bus sharing of none. None means that you cannot share the hard drive. Okay. Virtual means that you can share the hard drive, but only with a virtual machine which was on the same ESXi. Physical means that you can share the hard drive with virtual machine that is on a different ESXi as well. Okay. None means you cannot share the hard drive. Virtual means you can share the hard drive connected to this SCSI controller on an ESXi which is on a with a virtual machine which is on the same ESXi. Okay. And physical means that any hard drive connected to this SCSI controller can be shared with any other VM if it's on a different ESXi as well. Okay, this is what happens over here. Here you have SCSI controller types: LSI logic, bus logic. So if you are using a new operating system, always choose VMware Para Virtual Adapter, VMware Para Virtual. This will give you the best performance. Okay. So let me see what about that snapshot. Still stuck. Okay. Let me try something over here. Okay. So what I will do over here is if I have to attach an RDM, okay, and I want to share that RDM with a different VM. So if you see over here, VM3 is running on ESXi4 and VM2 is running on ESXi3. They are running on different ESXi host. Okay. I'll power on both the machines and let the other one come up. So if I have to share the RDM, okay, what will I do? I will first go to VM03 and I will attach a new SCSI controller. This is what I will do. Okay. Now this is SCSI controller. I will choose the bus sharing as physical. This is what I will do. Okay. I can choose the adapter as para virtual also, which will give me the best performance. So I'm attaching a new SCSI controller and I'm saying that, you will be in the physical mode. That is whichever hard drive gets connected to you that can be shared. And I'm changing you to para virtual because I want the best performance from you. Okay. This is I'm doing on VM03 and I'll hit the OK button. Now, when you do this on VM03, look at the snapshot icon over here. Right now, you can take a snapshot, right? Once this process completes, then you cannot take a snapshot. This functionality will go away, okay? Because if you are sharing a disk, then you will lose the functionality of a snapshot. Keep that in mind, okay? That would not be possible. So you have to basically, weigh in the option that you are looking for. I mean, you would not get every functionality with all the features. So you need to decide that what is more important for you. Now you see that the snapshot option is grayed out. Okay. Because on VM03, what you have done, you have attached a new SCSI controller. So you had the default one SCSI controller 0, which is always set to none that you cannot share. But SCSI controller 1 is basically set to physical because you can share. Now you will attach an RDM over here. And let's take an example that you will, attach RDM this one, the 286 GB one. Okay. You will choose this one, hit the OK button. And intentionally, you will change it and you will connect it to SCSI controller 1. This is what you are doing. You are not connecting the hard drive to SCSI controller 0, but you're connecting it to SCSI controller 1 because you have to share this RDM with a different VM as well. That is what the intention is, okay? You will hit SCSI controller 1. And now you see that, this is the first hard drive on SCSI controller 1. And that is why it says 1 out of 0. Okay. This is why you see it over there. And you will hit the OK button. Let the task get completed over there. Okay. Okay, the task is complete. Now, when you will go back to your operating system, do a refresh, open disk management. Come on. And you would see a new volume over here. Okay, why can't I give a drive letter? Windows. What is wrong with it? Let me reboot it again and see if it makes any difference. The same thing that you need to do on the VM02 as well. So on VM02, you will need to attach a SCSI controller again. Again, you would make sure that the SCSI controller that you're attaching it is in physical mode. You can choose the adapter as para virtual, or you can leave as default, whatever you are okay with it. Again, when you will do this, you would see that, on VM02, the snapshot functionality will go away because you have added a SCSI controller, which is the physical mode. Okay, now VM01 got completed. Let me power it on. Okay, let's see if it made a difference. No, I don't see it made a difference over there. Disk management. Nah, there's something wrong, not going through. Let me try it on a Windows 2019 machine. So on the Windows 2019 machine, I'll attach a SCSI controller and I'll keep it as physical. Okay. I'll hit the OK button. This will lose the snapshot functionality, which is as expected. Okay. Let me log into the operating system. Let me remove the RDM from here and I'll attach it later. Okay, I would come over here. I would go to disk management. Okay, let me attach the RDM over here. So I see the RDM of 190 GB. Okay, this RDM is getting connected to SCSI controller 1, which is on the sharing mode. I'll hit the OK button. Let it get complete. You go back over here, do a rescan. Come on. Where did I attach the RDM? Yeah, attached it over. No, I did not attach it over here. Shucks, where did I attach it? Ah, things are not going well. All kinds of errors are coming up. Okay, let me try this again. Come on. There's a snapshot consolidation. Now this has to go through. And I attached the RDM over here, I think. Yeah, I attached it over here. Come on. This consolidation. Okay, I'll come back to this RDM thing. This is taking too much of time over here, and things are not going as it is. So this is going to take some time. Let me move on to a different topic, and I'll come back to this RDM thing again. Okay. Uh, so the other thing that I would like to talk about is basically um, why. You remember this topic? I was saying that I would explain it to you later, which was hardware acceleration. Okay. So what hardware acceleration is and how it works, let me basically answer this question for you. So hardware acceleration that you see over here, it is basically called as Y, you know, like the letter Y. So yeah, we did talk about, disk consolidation. I mean, if you just go to that snapshot video that we did, so in that snapshot video, we did talk about the consolidation thing. Have a look at it over there, Gal. If things are not clear to you, let me know. Okay. So when we talk about why, it basically means this. Okay. And this is basically called hardware acceleration. Okay. This is basically called hardware acceleration, whatever the spelling is. Y basically stands for VMware API, VMware API for array integration. VMware API for array integration. This is what it means. So VMware API. What is API? When two services have to talk to one another, they basically do it over the API. Array. What is array? Storage. Integration. VMware service integrating with storage. This is what basically it means. Now, why is why, or I should say, why important? Okay. Why do I need this? This is very important because why gives me four functionalities. Okay. This will give me four functionalities. The first functionality is ATS. Second is copying. Third is zeroing out. And the last one is deleting. Okay. What do these four functionalities mean? Let me answer this question. The last three that you have is basically offloading. What it means. So let's say that you have an ESXi and you have a big storage. Okay. Now you have a virtual machine which is running over here. Let's say that you have a VM which is running over here. Now you want to copy a VM and you want to carve out a new copy. I've not told you, right now about cloning, but think about it. Cloning is a process wherein you can create a new VM, from an existing one. Now the hard drive for the virtual machine will be residing on the storage. Okay. Now what would happen is when you initiate a cloning process, and if you do not have a Y, if Y is not available, then what would happen is then every time the CPU needs to reach out to the storage and tell the storage that copy this file, copy this file, copy this file. Basically, CPU is constantly giving the instructions to the hard drive or to the storage, because of which the utilization of the CPU would go high if Y is not there on the storage. If you have a compatible storage with Y enabled, then what would happen is CPU will basically tell the storage, hey storage, this is the hard drive. All the files over here that you see, make a copy of it. Once this is done, let me know. I'm not going to come back to you and tell you again and again that which file has to be copied. Okay, just understand once, here are all the files, copy it and let me know. So what ESXi is basically doing is ESXi is offloading the job to the storage. So this is what the copying functionality will do. So if you have a Y enabled storage, so the copying process is basically offloaded to the storage. Any questions on this point? Okay. Similarly, you have the zeroing process. You remember I told you about the zeroing process, which is that when you create a VM and when you give a hard drive, let's say 100 GB. So what would happen is in the data store, if this is 100 GB, first the space is allocated. Okay, the first step is allocation, and the second operation is zeroing out. Then you basically, zero out that entire volume, and you fill out zeros over here. This is what you will be doing over here. Okay. So the zeroing out process, if you do not have a Y compatible storage, then it is the CPU that has to basically go to the storage and say that, fill out the zeros over here and fill out the zeros over here. This is what the CPU will have to do, and because of which the utilization of the CPU will go high. Okay. If you have a Y enabled storage, what CPU will do over here is that the CPU will say that uh, storage, here is the 100 GB volume, fill out all the zeros. I'm not going to come back again. Once this is done, you let me know. So what ESXi is doing, ESXi is basically offloading the task to the storage. So similarly for copying, for deleting, and same would happen for deleting as well. So for copying and zeroing out, ESXi is basically offloading everything to the storage and telling storage that you do things at your end. Similarly for the delete as well. So if there is a VM that needs to be deleted, end of the day, for the virtual machine, where are all the files? They are on the hard drive. So if the files have to be deleted for the virtual machine, ESXi will basically tell the storage that here are all the files related to this virtual machines. Okay. Delete all of them. When this is done, you let me know. Okay. So these are three processes wherein ESXi is offloading the process to storage. Doubts, confusion, question till here. Okay. What is ATS and why do I need this? Let me answer this question now. ATS basically means atomic test and set. Okay. Don't ask me why did the name in such a way. Atomic test and set. This is what ATS basically means. Okay. So you have a big storage over here. And let's say that you carve out a portion. Let's say 2 terabyte portion you carve out. Now you are basically presenting this 2 terabyte portion to all the virtual machines, to all the ESXIs. This is what you're doing. If you did not have a Y enabled, okay, when you did not have a Y enabled, and when you did not have ATS, then what would happen is, let's say that you have 3 virtual machines which are residing on on different ESXIs, and they are basically residing on the same 2 terabyte LAN. Now, when VM01 has to do any write operation on this data store, then ESXi will basically block the entire storage. It will lock the entire storage, and then it will do the write operation. The problem with this process is that VM02 and VM03, now they cannot do any write operation. They are not allowed to do any write operation because they will go in the queue mode. They're in the waiting mode right now because the data store is logged by ESXi01. When the activity is done, then ESXi01 will basically offload and basically will release the lock. Okay. Then ESXi2 will get hold of the lock, and then VM02 will start writing it over here. Okay. Now again, when VM2 is writing, then they would go basically in the waiting zone. Okay. And now when VM03 has to write has to do any write operation, it will again lock that entire data store and then it would write. Okay. So this is not a scalable thing that only one virtual machine can do a write operation and others have to wait for it. What is the solution? Solution is ATS. What is ATS doing? Instead of locking the entire data store, now they basically lock the sector in which you are writing. So we know that hard drive has a lot of sectors where a write operation is made. So whichever sector on which the write operation is happening, ATS will only block that sector, not that entire data store. Okay. Two virtual machines writing on the same sector is very rare. That's not going to happen. That is why what happens is that when you block only the sector, there are very, very high chances that multiple virtual machines will be able to write to the same data store. This is what basically ATS is doing for me. Doubts, confusion, questions on these 4 points. Okay. Now, how do I verify that which options are enabled and which ones are not enabled? Why do I see an unknown over here? What does this unknown means over here? Let me answer this question now. Okay. So before I answer this question, consolidation, this is still going on. Okay, let me power off this VM. And hopefully that might go through quickly. Okay. So what you have is that you have 4 options: ATS, copying, zeroing, and deleting. Okay. When all the 4 options are enabled or supported, then you would see supported written over there. Okay. When all the options are not supported, then you would see not supported written over there. Okay. When you have few options, when you have one or more than one options enabled, but not all the 4 options are enabled, then you would see unknown written over there. This is what it means over there. Okay. So depending on the message, you can come to know that whether your external storage is supporting all the options or it is not supporting all the options. Okay. So supported will only come up if your storage is supporting all the 4 options. Okay. Not supported, I'm not supporting any. And unknown means I'm supporting one or more than one, but not all of them. Okay. So how would you verify that which options are supported, which ones are not supported? Okay. So to verify, I need to run a command. Okay. What is the command? Let me show that to you. Okay. So the command that you have over here is basically you need to go to the ESXi command line. Okay, this got completed. Okay, fine. Come on, still says consolidation needed. Why? This got completed now. Okay, I did the consolidation now. Consolidate. Okay, come on. Okay, let's see if that goes through. Right, so what you need to do is you need to go to the command line of the ESXi. So I'll take a putty over here and I would go to ESXi04, log in as root, and the password welcome@123. You log in over here, increase the settings. Okay. And the command that you need to run to check on the ESXi is storage, ESXCLI storage, core, device, Y, status, get. Okay. So now you remember T10, this is coming from the open filer. So now you see ATS is not supported, cloning is not supported, zeroing out operation is supported on open filer. I don't know how, but it is somehow supported. And then delete is also not supported. Okay. So clone and Xclone are they're basically the same thing. Okay? So you have these 4 options which are basically are there. One of them is supported and the others are not supported. That's the reason you see over there unknown. Okay. This is what basically a Y is. So in your environment, you should always have a compatible storage wherein it should say over there supported. It should never say not supported, nor it should say unknown. Any questions on why, on how it works and what it is? Okay. Okay. The other thing that I would like to talk about, and I'm still waiting for this to go through, and then I will basically talk about the RDM thing. So the other topic that I would like to talk about is basically SV motion, storage vMotion. So you remember I was talking about yesterday when you have a powered on or a powered off VM. Okay. Let's say this is a powered on VM that you have. Now I am again intentionally I'm taking a dummy VM because I don't want to waste time in the migration. Okay. So when you have a powered on VM and when you go to the actions and when you click on the migrate option over there, you see that you've got multiple migrate options over here. Okay. So the first option we already know about, this is vMotion, right? Here I'm changing the ESXi. I'm moving the virtual machine from one ESXi to another ESXi, and we looked at it that there was no ping loss, there was hardly any one ping loss, that would happen. And then the VM will move from one ESXi to another ESXi. We are not changing the storage. So it's only the memory, CPU, and network that are basically getting moved. Okay. Then I have another option over here, which is basically called migrating the storage, which is basically storage vMotion. Okay. Here, what I'm doing is instead of changing the ESXi, I am only changing the storage. Okay. So if the VM is residing on SAN 01, I am basically moving it to SAN 02. Okay. This is what I'm doing over here. How do I do this? So you see right now that the VM is running on SAN 02. Okay. So what I will do, I will say change storage only. Okay. I'm going to leave the VM on the existing ESXi. So my VM is running on SAN 02. I would basically switch it to SAN 01. It says that the compatibility checks is succeeded. Everything looks okay. I'll hit next. And you see over here, change storage. Leave a VM on the original compute resource on whichever ESXi it is running. Let it be. This is an online operation. There will be no downtime over here. And then you hit the finish button. Now what would happen is basically you are changing the storage. Okay. So the VM that was earlier running on SAN 02 now will basically flip over to SAN 01. This is what is going to happen over here. Okay. So once the migration is done, you do a refresh on the UI. Yeah. Still a UI thing. And now you see this is SAN 01. This is now got completed. Yeah. So this is the way you could have your VMs migrate from one data store to another data store. Now, there are a couple of, benefits with storage vMotion, or there are a couple of, quick hacks that you can do with storage vMotion. Let me show you that. So for example, if you go to this VM over here right now, and when you expand the hard drive, you see the name of the VM. It is dummy01. That is what the name is, and that is what you wanted to keep. Let's say someone comes and says, this is not the name that I wanted you to give. I want you to give a different name. I want you to give as development 01. Okay. Why are you giving as dummy 01? It had to be dev 01. Fine. You come over here, you make the change and you rename it to dev 01. Now this is an online activity and this goes through. Okay. Now, when you will go back to the hard drive, you would see that, still it is pointing to dummy 01. This is not renamed. This is not pointing to dev 01. Now, how do I fix this? Okay. I'll do a storage vMotion. So I'll come over here to migrate. I'll say change storage only. Hit the next button. I'll choose SAN 03. I have to choose a different data store. It cannot be the same data store. So I'll choose SAN 03, hit the next button, and then finish again. Okay. I'll wait for the migration to go through. Okay. Once this is done, now you go back to the virtual machine. And now you look at the hard drive, you see the name has been changed. Okay. This is something that you can do. Now, let's take an example. Someone says that I asked you to make it a thick provision. Why did you provision it as thin? It had to be a thick provision. Okay, fine, no problem. I'll change it to thick. What you do vMotion again, svMotion again. So you come over here, go to migrate, change storage only, hit the next button, okay, and choose it as thick drive. Instead of a thin drive, now you choose it as a thick drive. Okay, choose a different data store. It cannot be the same data store. So you choose SAN 01. You change the format as thick lazy zero. Okay, now you hit the next button, hit finish again. And now what would happen is when the VM disk is being migrated from one data store to another, it will basically change from thin to thick. This is something that we can do.
So the storage you have is all of them under open file, right?
Yeah.
So how about if it's a different
That will not make any difference.
same
If you're
concept? Okay.
correct. If you're going from a HP storage to a Dell storage or vice versa, that should work okay. So now when you would come over here and when you expand the hard drive, you would see that, now it is thick, lazy zeroed. Someone says, that was a mistake. It had to be thin again. Fine, no problem. You go back to the actions again. You go back to migrate, change storage only. You go back and you change it to thin provision. Just make sure that you choose the data store first and then you make the change over here. Choose the data store, then change the provisioning, hit next, hit finish.
Excuse me.
Go for it.
When we want to change that disk format like thin and thick, it is mandatory to change the data store also, right?
Yes. Whenever you are doing SV motion and you want all these, tips and tricks and hacks to work, you need to choose a different data store. On same data store, it will not work for you.
Thank you.
So here I'm now going from thick to thin again. Okay, this is something that I can do. Okay, so once this is done, now you go back to the VM, and now you would see that the hard drive is thin provisioned again. Okay. Now let's take an example. This VM has got multiple hard drives. Okay, so right now this hard drive 1 is basically residing on SAN 03. Let's say that you want to add another hard drive, but you do not have space on SAN 03. By default, what would happen is when you attach a new hard drive, it will also go in the SAN 03 data store. What if you don't have storage available over there? What if this is a new hard drive, a big hard drive that you're provisioning, and it has to be on a different data store? So how would you do that? You would come over here and you would say that you want to attach a new VM. Let's say this is a 2 GB hard drive that you want to attach. This is a thin provisioning. And then you would choose the location over here and you would change it. So right now it says store with the virtual machine. That is something that you don't want to do. Okay. You want to click on browse and now you can change SAN 01. So the virtual machine is basically residing on SAN 03, but the second hard drive only, you are intentionally keeping it on a different data store. Let's say SAN 02. I'll hit the OK button. So now I am keeping the second hard drive intentionally on SAN 02. This is what I'm doing. Okay. I'll hit the OK button. Okay. Wait for the process to get complete. Okay. And now when you will go back over here to the data store, you would see that you have got two data stores for the virtual machine. Why? Now you can do an edit, and this will give you an understanding that hard drive 1 is basically going to SAN 03, and the hard drive 2 is basically going to SAN 02. That's the reason you have got SAN 02 and SAN 03. Both of them are listed over here. Okay. Now let's take an example. I want to make the second hard drive only thick provisioned. Okay, not the first hard drive. The first hard drive should be thin provisioned, but the second hard drive has to be thick provisioned. What do I do? How do I make it thick? Okay, so for that, again, you do storage vMotion, hit next button, and then you have this option of configure per disk. Okay, you choose that option. And now you see that dev01, this is about the configuration files that it's talking about. And here you've got the two hard drives. Okay, which hard drive you want to change? I want to change the second hard drive. What do you want to do? Click on the configure button. Okay, now the second hard drive is right now residing on SAN 02. I want to move it to SAN 01. What is the format that I want to keep? I want to keep it as thick lazy. Okay, so I'm moving it to SAN 02 and I'm keeping it to lazy. This is what I want to do. Okay, now you come over here and hit the confirm button. Okay, so now you see that the second hard drive, SAN 0, it is going to SAN 01, and this will be a thick lazy, and everything else remains, the same the way it is. You hit the next button, you hit the finish button, and wait for the process to complete. Okay, so now you see over there that the second hard drive is basically residing on SAN 01, If you edit, and then you would see over here that the second hard drive is thick provisioned, and this is residing on SAN 01. So this is the way you can quickly verify. Okay. Now, for
So,
example, Mhm.
as you explained earlier, lazy zero is not workable, right?
Yeah, I mean, you should not be going with lazy zeroed. Either you should be going with a thick eager zeroed or with a thin provision. This is what I suggested earlier. Yes, you are right.
Okay.
I'm only
If you
choosing a lazy zeroed because eager will take some time in, filling out the
okay,
zeros. I don't
okay,
want to spend that time over there. That's the reason I'm choosing lazy zeroed.
okay. Real time, it is better to eager zero.
Correct. Eager zero should be only for the mission critical servers. All the other garbage servers wherein there is no production impact should always be a thin provisioning.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so this is what I would see over here, and these are the options that I have. Now let's take an example. This second hard drive, I want to share it with a different a virtual machine. Okay, so right now this second hard drive is basically on SCSI controller 0. Now if you see SCSI controller 0, this is on the bus sharing none mode, so this cannot be shared. So what do I need to do? I need to first power down the VM. Okay, this is a dummy machine, so I can do whatever changes I would like to. I would come over here, attach a SCSI controller. Okay, I would make it para virtual. I would give it physical, and I'll hit the OK button. Okay. Now the snapshot functionality would go away because I'm attaching a SCSI controller which is in the sharing mode. Now intentionally for hard drive 2, I would say that you get connected to SCSI controller 1. Okay, for the second hard drive, intentionally I'm doing this. I'll hit the OK button. Okay, I will go back and I would see that my second hard drive is now connected to SCSI controller 1, and SCSI controller 1 is basically the physical one that I have. Okay, I'll hit the OK button and I will power on the virtual machine. Okay, and cannot open. For clustering, verify the disk is created using the thick option. Okay. Okay, this is again a different kind of a bug, that when you are going with a shared option, it has to be thick eager zeroed. Okay, so it has to be for the clustering. It has to be thick eager zeroed, I believe. Okay, so I'll change this option. So I'll come over here. Let me try migrating it. Migrate storage. And let's say configure per disk. Second hard drive. Configure. I would choose this. Eager zeroed. Hit the confirm button. The hard drive 2 is attached to SCSI controller 2 with bus user, so it may be shared with others. Ensure that all the virtual machines are updated with the same location and migration, or they will fail to power on. Fine, I agree, I understand that. So when you are setting up a disk sharing, there are a couple of things that you will have to keep in mind. Always go with the testing, understand what the solution is, create dummy VMs and see how it works out for you. Because you might have some changes, you might have things which are not working. Check the latency, how it is. So this is something that skipped my mind, that it cannot be that thing. So you will have to refer to the documentation. If you don't do these things very often, then you would of course not keep in mind that what they are, and how to go about this. This is taking super duper time. I don't know what is wrong with VM01, why it is taking so much of time. Gosh, VM01, what is wrong with you? I could have created a new VM itself. Taking so much of time. Okay, while this is going through, let me look at the provisioning CPU, 16 GB RAM. If I have an ISO, I don't remember if I have an ISO. This is the Windows 7 only. No. Okay, I think I have it over here. 2019, where are you? Where are you? Okay, I don't see it over here. This is 2019. Okay, I believe this is 2019. Yeah, this is 4 GB. Fine. So this is okay. This is okay. Next, finish. Okay. Power on the VM. Open remote console. Okay, I will go over here, virtual machine settings. D drive, D drive. Connecting it locally with the D drive. Start the OS installation. Okay. Hopefully this should go through quickly. Okay. So I'm here. This process got completed. We try powering it on. Okay, so if you see over here, I have a disk connected to SCSI controller 1. Okay. And SCSI controller 1 is basically on the physical. So this disk can be shared. Okay. How would you do this? So this is running on ESXi4. I have a dummy 02. This is also running on ESXi4. Let me migrate this and let me bring it to another ESXi. Let's say I'll bring it to ESXi3. Next, finish. Let this go through. Now I'll power on this VM. Okay. I would come over here. I need to attach the SCSI controller because when you are attaching the shared hard drive, it has to be on the shared SCSI controller on both the sides. Okay. So I'll come over here, choose VMware Para Virtual Physical. Okay. Because if it's not on physical, it will not let you add the shared one. Okay. Snapshot functionality would go away. Now, if you look at this drive over here, the second hard drive, this is basically the address where this is residing. Okay. So let me make a note of this in the notepad. Okay. And I need to now attach this VM on dummy 02. I would come over here. I already have a SCSI controller. And I would click on existing hard drive. I will go to SAN 02, dev 01, _1, hit the OK button. and this has to be mapped with SCSI controller 1. Okay, this is what I need to do. I'll hit the OK button. And now you see that you have the same disk. The VM that you have over here on development 01, look at the address. The same VM is also mapped to dummy 02. Okay, so this can be achieved. Sharing of hard drive and sharing of RDM can be done in this manner. Now it depends on your application, it depends on your solution that you're trying to build, that whether it prefers an RDM or it prefers a virtual machine. So whatever it prefers, this is the way you need to go about it. Understand the nuances. For example, when you're sharing the virtual machine, it has to be only an eager zeroed. If it's not an eager zeroed, it will give you an error and it would not let you go through. So all these things will be mentioned in the documentation. So the solution that you're trying to build, set up a dummy solution first, do a testing and validate things are working fine. Then create actual VMs for that solution, and then have your production getting installed over there, or whatever you have to do at a production level activity. Okay. Any questions over here on sharing the disk with two different VMs on two different ESXis? Okay. Similarly, we do the same thing for the RDM as well. Okay. The next thing that I wanted to talk about, so we have covered right now. Let me quickly cancel it over here. Come on. Okay. So what we have
Excuse me.
covered, go for it.
I have two VMs, for example. I need to attach one disk for two VMs.
Mhm.
Is it possible?
I just did that now, the practical. The practical that I was showing you right now, wherein you
Okay.
have dev01.
Okay. For both VMs, single disk I have to assign, and it should be sync the data.
You
When
see it
the
over here now. You have development 01 VM.
okay.
Look at the path over here. san02 dev01 dev01 underscore vmdk. Now you look at the other VM over here, which is the dummy 02. The dummy 02 over here, if you go and if you see the second hard drive, this is again the same path that you have. So the same hard drive is getting shared with two different VMs, which are on two different ESXis.
Okay. The
Get the
data
point?
will also sync for.
This is the same hard drive, buddy. You're not syncing the data. Syncing of data would happen when you have two different hard drives and then you are syncing across the data. It is the same hard drive which is presented on both the VMs. So what sync
Okay.
will you do? You will not do any sync over here, no? Because
For
this is the same hard
example,
drive.
VMA, I logged in and same stored some data. And
Hmm.
same as I logged into the VMB, then
So
same
you
data will
need
be
to
available.
see, you need to understand, you are
Okay.
managing VMware platform. Your responsibility is to only map the disk. It is the application now which will be responsible that which disk is active on which node and which is passive on the other node. You get the point? The
Okay.
disk, if you keep it active on both the nodes, of course there will be data corruption. So now it is the responsibility of the application that you need to run, which is the cluster solution, and that will make the solution or the disk, active on one node and passive on another node,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Thank you.
Fine. The next thing that we need to do is that, when we were creating the storage, you remember over here, we had this option over here for NFS. Okay. What NFS is, how it works. Let me answer this question now. So I can create a VMFS data store that we saw yesterday on how we can create it. So you basically have a drive, you format it and you create a data store, and then it automatically gets assigned to all the other ESXis. Now what we are doing is, if you want to attach a disk, which is like a data store, but it is backed by NFS, instead of formatting the drive with the virtual machine file system, if you want to only mount an NFS, that is something that you can do as well. Okay. How would you do that? Let me show that to you. So first, what do I need to do? I need to first install the NFS role. So your NFS server can be a Linux, can be a Windows, whatever you are comfortable, have an NFS server. So right now I am installing the NFS role on a Windows server. So for that, what do I need to do? I need to come over here, expand file storage, and then you would see an option over here for server for NFS. This is the role which will basically enable NFS functionality on Windows Server. I'll choose this option, hit next, and install the functionality. Come on. Okay. Now I installed the NFS functionality. Now what do I need to do? I'll go to my C drive, for example, and I'll create a folder over here called NFS. Okay, or anything that I want, I can name it. I will share it via NFS. Okay, I'm not going to do a simple share. I'll do an NFS sharing. So for that, I'll go to manage NFS sharing. I'll share this folder. I'll give the root permissions, the read write permission, at a system level. This is what I'm doing. Okay. Hit OK, apply, OK, close. So I gave NFS level sharing to this folder. Now I'll go back to my ESXi and I would say that I want to create a new data store, and this time this has to be backed by NFS. Okay. I'll hit the next button. Now, depending on the protocol that you want to support, NFS 3 or NFS 4.1, you can do that. NFS 4.1 basically supports authentication that NFS 3 does not. Okay. You'll hit next. Now here it is saying that the volume, once the NFS folder is mounted, what do you want to call that? What do you want to call that data store on the ESXi? This is what it is saying. So I would say that I want to call it as NFS data store. Okay. What is the name of the folder that you plan to mount? NFS. On which server is that folder residing? Okay. So that folder is residing over here. Okay. I'll hit the next button. I don't want to mount it as read only. I want it to be a read write. I'll hit the next button. Okay. It says that, do you want to use any authentication? No, I don't want to use any authentication. Okay. So what you're doing is basically you are creating a new NFS data store. This will be the name you're mounting it from this server. This is the folder and this will be a read write. Hit finish. Check the task. Okay, it got completed. Now, when you will go to the data store, you will see over here that you have an NFS type data store. So all of them were VMFS, but this one is an NFS. So here you do not format the NFS data store. All that you're doing is basically you're mounting it. Okay, that's the only thing that you're doing over here. Now, if you will go to this data store, NFS data store, when you will click on it, you will go to the host tab and you will see that it is only mounted on ESXi3. Okay, but I've got other ESXis in my environment as well. I want to mount this data store on all my other ESXis. So what do? I make a right click on the NFS data store. and you see the option, mount data store to additional host. Click over here, choose all the remaining ESXIs that you have, hit the next button, hit the finish button, and that's about it. And then it will automatically get mounted on all the other ESXIs in the cluster. This is how simple it is, that you can have an NFS data store created on one ESXi, and then you can keep, mounting it on other ESXIs. So it's one click and you can, mount it. Yeah. Now, if you want to keep any virtual machine over here, you can absolutely do it. So NFS data store is supported as production grade. Of course, you need to make sure that, the backing of the server from where it is coming, it has to be of that level as well. So for example, if you talk about NetApp, yeah, NetApp basically provides you, with NFS functionality, but that is an enterprise class, that you can have. And then, NetApp provides you very fine, storages. So if you have a really good storage solution, and if you mount their data stores as NFS also, then VMware has got no problems. All the functionalities would work. But you need to keep in mind that your backing, your underlying storage is fast enough, for the NFS. So that's the only thing that you need to take care of. Rest, if you want to keep a virtual machine, you want to create a folder or do whatever you want to, you can absolutely do it. There are no concerns over here. Yeah. If you want to unmount your NFS data store, you would simply make a right click over here, and then you will click on unmount data store. Of course, this is a good option. You should put in the maintenance mode and all that, but all that you have to do is unmount data stores, hit the OK button, and gone. It is there, gone from all the other ESXi host. This is what would happen. And now you need to run that process again to mount that NFS data store. So you basically now need to come over here, go to storage, add new data store, choose NFS, and follow that entire configuration again. This is how you create an NFS data store. Okay. Any questions on VMFS and NFS data store?
What is the difference between VMFS and NFS? What is the use of?
It depends on you, what the use is. So basically with VMFS, you are formatting it. You are putting your file system of your ESXi on the volume, and then you are basically using it as a data store. With NFS, you are not formatting it. You are not putting your ESXi file system on it. Whatever the file system you have in the background, you're only mounting it. That's the biggest difference now. Like I mentioned earlier, both of them are production grade. If you have a good backing in the background, you can basically attach it. If you have, a vendor like a NetApp, which is supporting NFS, and it is able to provide you all the, production class capabilities, of course you can do it. So no concerns over there. As such, the only technical difference is the way, they work with an underlying process, the way they are formatted, and rest all the other technologies or all the other, operations, they remain the same. There is no difference that, whether this will not work on a HA, or if you keep a VM, that VM will not work, or you cannot do an SV motion. You can do anything and everything. So there are no concerns over there. But this is the only underlying differences about how they are provisioned and how they are added.
Okay.
Okay. So we spoke about VMFS. We spoke about NFS. Okay. Now there's something called as a vWall. Okay. What is a vWall? Why do we need it? Okay. This is something that I would not be able to do a practical for you. This is a very quick theory that I can tell you. Why? Because there is no appliance available, via which I can do a vWall testing. Earlier, there used to be Dell Unity, appliance, some kind of an appliance available, but that is, very hard to download and configure. So with vWall, I will not be able to show you any practical, but yes, I can explain you that, what this is and why do you need this. Okay. So when we talk about a vWall, okay, let me tell you that why they have introduced vWall. What was wrong with the traditional storage? So then you will understand better. Okay. So the way we have been using storage is that you have a big box, which is your SAN. Okay. And then you have a lot of ESXi boxes. Okay. And now what you do is you basically carve out a portion. Okay? You carve out a 2 terabyte portion, and you then basically present this portion to all the other ESXi's. This is what you need to do. Now, there are things that you have to keep in mind. That is the data store getting full? Is the data store able to give the required number of IOPS? Okay. Is the data store coming from SSD or is it coming from SATA? Okay. Um, so these are, couple of management overheads, that you will have to do as an administrator when it comes to data stores. That is, just make sure that, everything is looking okay. Are you getting a good amount of IOPS? Um, what kind of capabilities that this LUN can provide you. Okay. Whether it can provide you with, good IOPS, throughput, latency, what is the kind of backing it has. So all these things you need to manually, keep a check. Okay. And this is, what the drawback is. This kind of a setup is basically called a traditional storage. Okay. This is basically called traditional storage. Traditional storage basically means that, you have the basic things and, like I mentioned earlier, you are basically just trying to figure out that you are doing things manually over here. So VMware said, yeah, that there is a better way of managing the storage instead of you taking care of the IOPS and the space and all the other things. There is something new that we have come up with. What is that something new that they have come up with? That something new is basically called a vWall. Okay, what is vWall? vWall is say about 5 or 6 years old, but it's still not that popular. Okay. I still see that, people still use the traditional storage. Nobody has shifted really that fast to vWall. I mean, the technology is there, but people are not comfortable with vWall. Okay. So what vWall basically says is that you have a vCenter. Okay. With vCenter, they will register VASA. What is VASA? So on vCenter, they say that they are going to register VASA, which is VMware API for storage awareness. I told you earlier why. That was VMware API for array integration, where it was basically doing the offloading of the processes. Here they say we are registering vCenter with VASA, and VASA means VMware API for storage awareness. What they are basically essentially telling you is all the capabilities that the storage has, you are basically showing all those capabilities to the vCenter. Okay, so VMware API for storage awareness. That is what the full form of VASA is. Okay, so you're basically showing all the capabilities of your storage that you have with your vCenter. The benefit that you get, so for example, your storage can support deduplication, it can support compression, it can support RAID, different RAID levels that you can have. It can support different kind of IOPS that you need. Okay, it can support you different kinds of tiering levels. For example, you have, SATA and SSD. So the data can automatically move from SATA to SSD if it's in use or if it's not in use. All these capabilities are here. So what you do is that for these capabilities, you create something called as policy. Okay, you create policy on the vCenter. And now what you do is you create a virtual machine and you assign this policy to the virtual machine. So the virtual machine, depending on the policy, will get the kind of capabilities it needs. The throughput, the IOPS, it has to run on SSD, it has to move to SATA. So whatever it is, depending on the policy, it will basically get to know about this. So this is what a vWall is. So in vWall, you do not have to create a lot of data stores. There's only one data store that you create, and that's about it. That is called a vWall data store. There are components called like, a protocol endpoint, storage containers, all these terminologies are there. But I have never really worked on a vWall, okay? And neither is there any, appliance available free of cost, wherein I can show you that, how this functionality works. So basically my hands are tied. There's nothing that we can do over here. Even though if you take an official VMware training, Then also, they have no practicals on vWall. They only have practicals on iSCSI that we did. Okay. So this is a limitation that we have with vWalls. But again, I don't think so that you will be using a vWall anywhere. But if you have a storage which is vWall compatible, then of course you can do this. In VMware, there is a company called Pure Storage. I'm not sure if you've heard the name about it. They are basically VMware registered partners, and they are a lot into vWall. They basically try to provision vWall, and they try to show a lot of value of a vWall, but I don't know that how many people go for it. Yeah. So this is what in a nutshell vWall is. Sorry, I don't have much to talk over here. Okay. All right. Now, the final thing which is left in the storage to talk about is basically, like I mentioned earlier. So when you come to storage, when you go to your data store, to the data store tab, okay, you go to storage and you have something called as the data store cluster. What is a data store cluster? Why do we need it? Let me answer this question. Okay. Before we set up a data store cluster, I need to quickly format and okay, make sure that there is no RDM which is attached over here, because I want to format the RDMs and create data stores from it. Okay, that's fine. If I go to VM01, this should be okay as well. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go to ESXi03. I will go to storage, new data store, VMFS. Okay, I'll choose the first data store. Next, all available partition, fine. Finish. Oops, I did not give a name over there. I only gave data store. Okay. Let me create another data store over here. This time I'll give it a name. So new data store. Okay, I'll call it as SAN 06. Okay, so I've got the two data stores over here. Okay. Now, when you have to create a data store cluster, the question is, why am I creating a data store cluster? What is the benefit out of it? Okay. The only reason that why would you create a data store cluster is because you want storage DRS. That's the only functionality, that you are basically looking at. Okay. What is storage DRS? So you remember I told you that, we can do a vMotion. What is vMotion? You pick up a VM, take it from one ESXi to another ESXi, and the pings are still working. No impact to the virtual machine. That is what a vMotion is. Okay. vMotion is a manual process. If you want to do vMotion, you need to make a right click, you need to do everything, and then the VM will be migrated. I want to automate vMotion. I want the vMotion should happen automatically. The VMs should get moved automatically. The answer is DRS. You enable DRS, and if you automate and you give the fully fully automated mode of DRS, then it will be able to migrate the VMs automatically without giving you any recommendations or without you doing anything. Okay. Similarly, today I told you about SV motion. What is SV motion? So I take a VM and I change the data store. So I'm basically saying that VM, I'm not going to move you from the ESXi. You stay on your original ESXi, but I am going to move you from one data store to another data store. Okay, why would I do that? So for example, the data store is not able to give that required number of IOPS, or it is getting full. There is too much of latency coming over there. That is backed by SATA. I want to move the VM to an SSD. All those factors you do an SV motion, wherein you migrate a VM from one data store to another data store. Now, like vMotion, this is a fully online process. There is no downtime involved, and the VM will basically move from one data store to another data store without any downtime. The end user will have no knowledge about it, and this can be all achieved while everything is online. Now, again, SV motion is a manual activity. So I was basically, migrating the VM from one data store to another data store, and I was showing you that, you can change the format, or you could basically, have it in a different format, or you could rename it. And I was showing you all the hacks and the hacks over there. But that is all a manual activity. If you want to automate storage vMotion, okay. So do you remember the earlier problems that I was telling you that, I was talking about with a traditional data store? You need to keep in mind that um, you need to take care of the storage, you need to take care of the IOPS, and you have to basically manage the data stores on your own. And that is why you had vwall. So that was basically a partial lie. Okay, that was a lie that I was saying that you have to do everything manually. That's not true. You don't have to do things manually. You can give the control to VMware, and VMware will basically make sure that it will take the matter in its own hands, and it will make sure that it will do the job. So for example, when you enable DRS, you remember the topic when we enabled DRS? At that point of time, what we did over there was we gave the control to the system, saying that you run DRS in the fully automated mode, and now when you feel like the VM should get migrated, you do the migration. You do not have to wait for my approval, or you do not have to give me any recommendation. What suits you the best? You are the best guy to judge my environment. Go for it. That is what DRS was. We were basically giving the control to VMware to migrate the VMs as required. Similarly, for SV motion, I can also give the control to the system. Okay, wherein I will be free from all these challenges of making sure that the data store has space. No IOPS is running into issue. I mean, VMs are getting the IOPS. There is no latency. All those things will be taken care of. I do not have to worry about it. And that is why people are not adopting vWall, because you still have very foolproof features available on VMware, which are super, super flawless. I mean, you do not have to do anything. Just enable the functionality. And like I always say, it's like that missile, fire and forget. You configure the functionality, and then that's about it. Okay. So if you want the migration to happen automatically from one data store to another data store, you call it SDRS. So this is for compute. Okay. And this is for storage. Any questions? What you see with the terminologies on the screen? Any questions anyone has? Okay. How do you configure it? What do I need to do? I need to configure a data store cluster. Okay. This is what I need to do. Remember earlier, I configured an ESXi cluster. So this cluster that I've configured over here is basically my ESXi cluster. So I have a cluster wherein I have all my ESXi's clubbed together. And now in this cluster, I can do an HA, I can do a DRS, and I can do all those functionalities. Similarly, if you want your data stores have the capability of migrating any VM from one data store to another data store automatically, you also need to create a cluster, and that will be dedicated for the data stores. And that is basically called a data store cluster. Okay. So to configure a data store cluster, all that you have to do is you have to go to the data store section and then make a right click on your data center. And then, you will get the option for data store cluster. Now you can give it a name, whatever name you feel like, you give that name. There's data store cluster. It is in the Mumbai data center, that I'm creating. And what is my data store type? Which kind of data stores would you like to participate? Now you cannot do a mix and match over here. If you're going ahead with VMFS, it will be only the data stores which are backed by VMFS. If you're going with NFS 4.1, it can be again only NFS 4.1. So you remember the point that I was talking about, that you have all the capabilities, right? So Ravi, to answer your question, there is no difference in VMFS and NFS 4.1. Basically, both of them have the same capability. Whatever the VMware functionality or the operation that VMFS can do, NFS can also do. It's only the difference of the underlying storage, the underlying architecture, the underlying, the processes, the way file system of VMFS works. In this scenario, you have a different file system, you're only mounting it. Okay, that's the only difference. Apart from that, everything else, from the functionality point of view, VMware has basically brought NFS at par with VMFS. Earlier, 10 years back, yes, I would say that VMFS was the uh, the most loved son. Okay, and NFS was basically the stepson. I mean, there was no attention given to NFS 10 years back. Now both of them are basically on the same par. Okay. So I can choose a VMFS over here. And now this is a very important functionality. You want storage DRS. Okay. You want system to tell you that which data stores of yours are giving you problems, which VM is trying to get IOPS and is not able to get it, which VM is running into latency issues. You want to know all these things, because if you have 500 data stores, if you have thousands of virtual machines, trust me, you cannot keep a track of it. You have to depend on tools, you have to depend on processes that can tell you about it. There is nothing that you can do manually to get to know about this. Okay, as a system admin, you have to depend on it. When you have 4,000 VMs in a cluster, 500 data stores, you cannot keep a track which VM is basically running into issues. You have to rely on processes, you have to rely on tools to tell you about it. Okay, so that is why we need this functionality. So I am enabling storage DRS. So like I mentioned, in VMware, everything is a UI. So you just basically click on the toggle and you enable the functionality. That's about it. Okay, you hit the next button. Now over here, I would say initially when you are starting off, start off with no automation. Okay, trust the technology, but with time. Trust the technology as things go along. Okay, do not trust the technology right from day one and you give the complete control. Always remember, this is a journey. Okay, so things will take time for you to get accustomed to VMware or for you to start trusting the technology. Okay, so start off with no automation. So here what would happen is you will get the recommendation. So if you read over here, will not perform automatic migrations. So no automatic migration is going to happen over here, but you will be informed about it, that this is the issue and you should basically look into it. Okay, and then gradually you can build your task. Now, here at a cluster level, I am saying that no migration should happen automatically. Okay. Now here are a couple of examples that what should happen. So for example, if you are running out of space, so on a data store, let's say that if you are running low on space, then what should happen? It should use the cluster settings, wherein that means that no automation, only recommendation will be given to you. Or do you want to do an override, or you want to say that when it comes to space issues, I don't want you to give me any recommendation. I want you to take the control and to basically migrate the VM. Okay. So if you want, you can override. So these are the 5 conditions. These are the 5 scenarios where what should happen you are defining over here. Should the cluster settings, which is the no automation, should those policies be followed over here? Or if you want to do an override, you can also do that. So the first scenario, like I mentioned, is if you are running into space issues on a data store, what do you want to do? Should the migration happen automatically, or should you get recommendation as per the cluster settings that you have defined over here? Okay. If you want the automation to happen automatically, you can just basically flip the setting over here. The second is regarding the input output. If the kind of IOPS that you are throwing and you're not able to get a response on the data store, what do you want to do? Should you be notified about it, or do you want to do the migration automatically? If there is a rule that you have applied, what is the rule? There can be a rule wherein you can say that two VMs should basically be on the same data store. Two VMs should be on a different data store. Okay. These kind of rules that you can have. So if there is a rule that you apply, if there is a violation of the rule, should you be notified about it, or should the migration happen automatically? So that is the next cluster setting. You can apply a policy. So for example, you have few data stores which are backed by SSD, and you have got few data stores which are backed by SATA. Now you create a policy wherein you tag your SSD data stores and you say that VM01, you are a critical VM for me. I want you to run always on these, SATA. I want you to run on SSD data stores. I don't want you to move away from SSD data stores. So you can create a policy and you can apply that policy on that VM. So what would happen is if the VM somehow is accidentally moved from that SSD data store to a SATA data store, um, storage DRS will let you know about it. That there's a mismatch in the policy. This VM is no longer running on SSD data store. So it depends on you. What do you want to do? Do you want to get a recommendation, or do you want the cluster to automatically migrate the VM? It's up to you. Okay. This is the other option that we have. And then the next thing is the VM evacuation. You remember I showed you the option wherein I could put a data store in the maintenance mode. Okay, so when I put a data store in a maintenance mode, then no virtual machine could run on it. So if you have a data store which has basically 3 or 4 uh, VMs on it, for example, okay, and if you want to put that data store in the maintenance mode, so what would happen is that all those VMs will be automatically migrated, from one data store to another data store. Now, do you want that migration should happen automatically? Okay, or do you want, should you be notified about it? So whatever you want, you can do that. So that option is also available with you. Okay, so these are basically the 5 conditions wherein VMware is asking you, what do you want to do? Do you want to have the control, or do you want to give the control to the system? So whatever you feel like, you can do this over here. Any questions on this screen? Okay, I'll hit next. I'll choose everything as cluster settings. Okay, I am not doing an override for anything. Now, it is saying that when a recommendation is made for SDRS, that is when a recommendation is made that you should migrate this VM from one data store to another data store or whatever it is, should you include the IO matrices as well? All the input output activities that are happening, do you want to include them as well, in your recommendations as part of your recommendations? This is enabled by default, keep it enabled by default. Okay, I don't see an option of, disabling it. I don't see any valid reason why you should disable it. Okay. IO load balancing functionality is available only when all the host is connected to the data store and are version 5.0 and later. So yeah, so that will be the case. So it is basically saying that, just make sure that all the data stores are connected to all the ESXIs as a part of the cluster, which will be by default. So like I've been talking about it right from day one, in your cluster, all the configurations should be uniform. Whatever you do on ESXi 1 should also be done on ESXi 96. Okay, so all the clusters in your ESXi should have exactly the same configuration. Okay, no differences should be there. Then it talks about the IO latency. So it basically states over here, dictates the minimum IO latency for each data store below which IO balancing moves are not considered. So it is saying that if you have a latency of less than 15 milliseconds on a data store, I'm not going to do anything. Okay, I will only look into latency issues if the latency is above 15 milliseconds. If it's below 15 milliseconds, I'm not going to do anything. Trust me, if you have a latency till 20 milliseconds, VMware is not going to help you. VMware will say 20 milliseconds is perfectly fine as latency. That is why, they have this, latency of 15 milliseconds over here. So if you have a latency which is below 15 seconds, 15 milliseconds, then that is perfectly fine. No concerns over that. Okay. What about space? Okay. Let's say your data store is getting full. Okay. Now what do you want to do? Okay. So you remember in my previous option, I said over here that if my space is getting full, I don't want you to migrate. I chose the cluster settings. So basically I'm saying you are not supposed to migrate the VM automatically. But the question is, what is the threshold that you want to have for the space? At what time do you want to say, or at what level do you want to say, yes, my data store is getting full? Okay, there has to be certain percentage of the data store when you step in and when you say, now my data store is getting full, I want to do something about it. So the default option, like I've been saying, keep everything below 80%. So VMware's recommendation for CPU, memory, network, hard drive, whatever it is, just keep below 80%. If it's below 80%, everything in your environment will be absolutely fine, and you as a system admin will be the most happiest. So if you go above 90, 95%, then as a system admin, you will get late night calls. Okay. So here the option is that for every data store, make sure that the utilization is below 80%. If it's below 80%, you do not have to worry about it. If it goes above 80%, then yes, you need to bring it down to 80% and then, see that which VM can be migrated or what you can do about it. Okay. Now you say that in VMware, the maximum data store capacity that you can have is 64 terabyte. Okay. If you take 80% of 64 terabyte, this is 15 terabyte. Okay, 6% will be 6.4. So 6.4, no, 13 terabyte. Sorry, my bad. It'll be 13 terabyte. Okay. So you were saying that keep at least 13 terabyte free on every data store. Now you would say this is too much. I mean, 13 terabyte free on a data store, this is too much of a capacity. Okay. So now what you can do is you can do an override. So here you choose the override option. So you say, just keep 3000 GB free on every data store. This is what you want to do. So for example, every data store in your organization is of 30 terabyte, is of 50, is of 25 terabyte, is of 20 terabyte, whatever the number is. Okay. And you want to say that, every data store should have at least 3000 GB available. This is what our intention is. Okay. So you can even do this. So this is one of the other settings that you can have. Instead of 80%, you define a number, whatever you want to go ahead with. Okay.
Excuse
I'll
me.
let, uh-huh.
How can we come to know? Is this any push notification?
Yes, of course, of course. There are recommendations. I'll show you how you can get to see over there.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Just like DRS, you get recommendations over here. Also, you will get recommendations, and then you have to apply on the recommendation, and then only the migration would happen automatically. Okay. That is why it says no automation, wherein it will only give you recommendation. I'll show you, where you will see all those things. Now it is saying that the data store cluster that you are creating it against which ESXi cluster. Okay, so which you want to tag along which ESXi cluster. So I'm saying that I want to, it'll be against my production cluster, which is this one. This is my production cluster where all my ESXi's are. So this is I'm tagging along with. Now comes the real part. Which data stores you want should be part of this data store cluster. Okay. Now, like I mentioned, on every ESXi, you could have 512 data stores. That is the kind of data stores that you can have on every ESXi. But in a cluster, the same data stores are basically given to all the ESXi. So if you have 96 ESXis, so it will be the same data stores which are presented on ESXi 01. Those same data stores will be presented to all other ESXis in your cluster, to all the other 95 ESXis. Okay. So here it is saying that if you are creating a data store cluster, it is important that you choose only those data stores which are connected to all the ESXis in your cluster. Okay. And that is what the default option is over here. If you see this default option, it says show data stores connected to all hosts. Okay. And It is your responsibility as a VMware admin that whenever you are provisioning a new data store, it should be connected to all the ESXis in your cluster. If your data store misses out one or two ESXis in your cluster, buddy, it's your responsibility and you are absolutely responsible for it. No excuses here and there. Okay. So when you have to attach data stores as part of the data store cluster, you do have an option over here wherein you can say show all data stores. Show all data stores means if a data store is not connected to all the ESXis, then also you show me that data store. This is what it means, okay? But do not go with this option. And like I mentioned, it is your responsibility as a VMware admin that the storage is getting mapped to all the ESXis in the cluster. So here I'm going to pick all my data stores because all these all these hosts you see over here, all hosts connected. This data store is connected to all hosts. This is what it is saying. So basically I'm selecting all these data stores. I'll hit next. And here I get a summary. This is what I'm about to do. I'm about to create a data store cluster with all those configurations. These are the settings. These data stores are getting connected to this cluster. This is going to get connected. And then I hit the finish button. There'll be a task that will run. Okay, test data store. It gets completed. Okay, and now you see a test data store cluster. Look at the icon over here. Look at this icon over here, right? So this is kind of a lot of data stores clubbed together. Okay, so this is how you basically understand that, this is a data store cluster. Okay. Now, it will show you the total capacity. All the data stores combined together, what is the total capacity that you have? Okay. You were asking me, Ravi, that, from where would you figure out that, how it is? Here
Yes.
are the recommendations.
Okay.
This is the way you will get to know what the recommendations are. If any recommendation did not go through, what was the history of the recommendation? Okay. Now, if you edit storage DRS, let me show you something over here. Okay. So these are the default configurations that we spoke about. Okay. These are the default configurations that we spoke about. Go to the advanced option. You see this option over here? It checks imbalances every 8 hours. So the first recommendation that you will theoretically get is after 8 hours. This is the default configuration. It does not have to be at 8 hours. If you want, you can bring this down. Okay. This can be between 1 hour and 29 days. My suggestion will be go with 1 hour because you have a storage recommendation of no automation. Okay. Why am I saying to start with no automation? Understand the point. When you have a virtual machine and when you have to do vMotion, in vMotion, I am focusing on RAM because CPU and network, they are not heavy consumers of resources, okay? It's the RAM I have to pay attention to. What is the general RAM that you give to a virtual machine? 16 GB, 32 GB, 64 GB, 100 GB? That is the kind of RAM that you will give generally, to a virtual machine. So maximum in a normal environment, you will be migrating 100 GB of RAM. This is what you will be doing. Okay? Now let's talk about SV motion. In SV motion, I am migrating the hard drive. The complete hard drive is getting moved from one storage to another storage. What will be the hard drive size? Minimum 500 GB. Because the C drive on your Windows will be 200 GB. Then comes the data drive, which will be another 300 or 400 GB. Compared to 100 GB, you are migrating close to about a terabyte. Okay. So storage vMotion will always take time. Keep in mind, because you are migrating 1 terabyte of data from one data store to another data store. Of course, this will take time. When you are doing a vMotion, in vMotion, you are only targeting 32 GB RAM, 64 GB RAM, 48 GB RAM. That is what the general configurations are. Okay. And this is what you're targeting. So if you have to migrate 48 GB RAM on a 10 Gbps link from one ESXi to another ESXi, less than 5 minutes and you are done. Okay. Compare that if you have to migrate 1 terabyte on a 10 Gbps link. Now think about the time it will take. Of course, it will take 20 to 25 minutes. Okay. I am not saying that, this process will cause any issues. I'm absolutely not saying that. This is an online activity. Your VM will continue to work and there would be no concerns. And then the SV motion will continue to work in the background as well. However, okay, big however, if you have a mission critical server, which is super duper critical for you, okay, let's say that you have a SQL server which is pumping a lot of IOPS, just think about it, I should give you an example of, like a racing car. Think about the engine of a racing car. It is basically pumping in a lot of throttle, too many machines going up and down, all those levers and pulleys, they are doing a lot of work. Okay. So if you have a server which is basically doing a lot of IOPS throughput, SQL server, mission critical server that you have, do not SV motion that VM. Do not vMotion that VM. Okay. Let me say again, do not do that, because I agree this is an online activity. vMotion, SVMotion will not have an impact on that mission critical server, but trust me, there can be an application latency. Okay. When you are in production, when you have a SQL server which is actually minting money for your organization, okay, do not and do not, you know, uh, interrupt that operation. Okay. So that is why sometimes it becomes important that few virtual machines you set intentionally that the migration should be manual. It should not be automatic. Okay. So similarly, when you are migrating a hard drive, keep in mind that you have to migrate at least 500 GB or close to about a terabyte of data from one data store to another data store. Do not go ahead with an automated option. Okay. Go with a manual approach. Understand what kind of recommendations VMware is giving you in your environment, and then basically switch it from manual automation to fully automated. But initially, have it on manual option only. Okay. Here, you are only requesting for recommendations. So why do you want to wait for a recommendation for 8 hours? Have the recommendation set for every 1 hour, because it is not going to migrate. No, it is only giving you recommendations. Migration, you want to do, you don't want to do, it's up to you. Okay. So my suggestion would be enable storage DRS, set it to no automation, and then check the imbalance every 1 hour. Let the, let the recommendations come in and see, how it is working for you. Okay. By default, the virtual machines are kept together. Okay, so the VM decays on a virtual machine, by default, they will be kept on a single data store. If you want, you can override that as well. From where we can do that, I'll show it to you. Okay. Now here it talks about the IO imbalance. That is, how quickly the storage vMotion should try to migrate the VM. How quickly it should try to migrate the hard drive from one storage to another storage. So as you can see, aggressive too quickly, conservative will take a lot of time. This is the default parameter. So you see the default parameter is somewhere around here. It is on the aggressive side. Keep it that way. Why? Because you are on no automation. You do not have to worry about it. Everything is going to be up, all the recommendations. Whenever you feel comfortable, you do that. Okay. Here it talks about the minimum latency, that it needs to have. And then these are the advanced options. Again, do not apply any advanced configuration only when VMware says it. If you see a documentation, if you read a KB article, then only go for it. Else you don't go for it. Okay. Now, I want to get the notification right now. So what do? I click on the button run storage DRS now. If there's anything, you cannot wait for an hour, you cannot wait for 8 hours, and you want to get the notification right now, You tell me if there's anything not working. So you click on the button, run storage DRS now. If there's anything, it will let you know about it. If there's nothing, nothing is going to come up. Now let me intentionally try to get you a recommendation. Okay. So what will I do over here is it is set to no automation. Okay, fine. I'm going to intentionally fill out a data store. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. You see my data stores, which one is free? 30 GB is free. Okay, so this is what it is. Okay, fine. Where are the VMs? They are here. Okay, let me show you a recommendation by putting in a rule. That's a quick and easy way. So what you can do is you can go to configure and you see the options over here. VM overrides. You delete this. Yeah, what this is, I'll tell you later. Now I can create a rule. What is the rule? Okay. All virtual disk of the virtual machines should be placed on a different data store. Okay, so I'm basically saying over here that the hard drives that I'm basically now going to pick, they should be on a different data store. They should not be on the same data stores. So you have a development one wherein you have got multiple data stores. All the other ones have a single data store. Okay. So I will choose development one, hit the OK button, and I would say different. Okay, hit the OK button. Select at least 2 virtual machines. Okay, that's fine. I'll choose dummy 02. Okay. Both of them were on SAN 02. Now you go to monitor, go to recommendations, run storage DRS now, and see you get a recommendation. Violation. It's a rule violation that you see over here. Okay. Because you wanted the rule that you have over here was basically that you have to make sure that these 2 VMs should be placed on a different data store. They are basically running on SAN 02. That's the reason you get a notification, and this is the way you will get a recommendation. So be it a policy, be it a storage full, be it an IOPS thing, be it a VM evacuation, whatever it is, this is the way you will get a notification. Okay. And here, now you need to do, basically select this option and then say apply recommendation. Now, when you do an apply recommendation over here, okay, yeah, because, yeah, okay. I have that SCSI sharing thing, no? That is why this will not go through. So I need to remove this SCSI sharing thing. That's the reason. Okay. So when you have SCSI sharing, then you would have concerns over here. Give me a minute. Okay, so I need to remove that thing. Sorry, let me remove that. I wasn't paying attention if that did go through. Yes, that did go through. Okay. So now if I go back to the recommendations, do I have any recommendation right now? No. There was a fault? No. There was a history? No. Okay, reconfigure the virtual machine, that's fine. But what about the migration? Oh, I removed that other hard drive. Oh, sorry. Now there is only one hard drive, no? So if you go back to the rule, there is no conflict as of now. So you see, this is running on SAN 02, this is running on SAN 03. So there is no conflict, no. If there is no conflict, why would it migrate the VM? So I can do an edit over here. And let me bring in another VM which is running on the same data store. So what is running on SAN 02? Which VM? So 2019 or VM03 or dummy VM. Yeah, anyone I can pick. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go over here, edit, and I would say add, and I would say dummy3. Hit OK, hit OK. And see, this is running on SAN 02. And I told them that, they had to be on different data stores. And now you go to monitor, you go to recommendations, you say run DRS. Okay. It says that, it has to apply the rule. Now you basically select the option, you say apply recommendation. Again, the same thing, dummy 02. Okay, dummy 02. Let me remove this. Let me remove this, hit the OK button. Come on. Come on. Dummy 3. Dummy 3, which data store you are on SAN 02? Okay, I'll add dummy 3. This is taking too much of time. Rules. Edit. Dummy 3 is already part of it. Why not add dummy 4? Dummy 4. Okay, now when you go back, do a recommendation. The operating system did not respond. Operating system did not respond. I have to migrate one at a time. Okay. Now remove this, hit OK. Let's see if it responds now. Okay. Let's see, this is going through. So you have got a couple of recommendations over here. Let's see now if it finally migrates for me. Yeah, finally it does. Okay. So you see over here, this is the way the recommendations will be, and then you will be able to see that the migrations happen automatically and the initiator the system over here. Okay. So this is how you will get the recommendations. This is how you can see what the history has been, which VM has been migrated. If they were trying to migrate, they could not go through. You will get to know about this. Okay. When you would go to configure, you would see the rules over there. Okay. This is the way you can do about it. Now here you would have an option of VM override. So for example, you choose a VM, let's say dummy 4, hit next. Now what do you want to do? Earlier at the storage level, you have the automation as no. You can override and you can set it to fully automated only for one VM. Okay. So only for one VM, what you're saying is that I want to basically do an override wherein I want to say that, the migration should happen automatically for this VM. Okay. So flip it around. When you are comfortable with your environment, you can basically say that, migrate all the VMs. But the mission critical VMs, that you have in your environment, for them, you can say override as no automation. Okay. So at the cluster level, you say that, migrate any VM, whatever you feel like. I've got no concerns over that. But here are 10 or 15 VMs which are important for me. Do not migrate those VMs. For those VMs, you can come over here and set the automation as no, no automation. And then, for all the other 100, 200, 500 VMs that you have, you can set it to automatic. So it's all about, understanding your environment. It's all about how do you want to play with your environment and the kind of setting that you have. Okay. So by default, you have the options wherein you are keeping the VM details on the same data store. If for some VM, you have a requirement wherein you cannot keep the VMs on the same data store, I mean the hard drives, then you can come over here and you can say an override as well. And you can say that, for this VM, sorry, I cannot keep the VMs on the, I cannot keep them on the same data store. I want to keep them on a different data store. So you would choose over here and say no. And this is how there's a different rule. Okay, there's a conflicting rule. Fine. So here, it did not allow me the VM details, but it only allowed me for the no automation. And, I had this option over here and I could say no. So this is the way you can create a rule. You can, you can do an override, you can do a rule, you can configure the changes. And this is what a storage DRS is. Okay. You can come over here and you can delete the storage DRS as well. All your data stores will not be gone. Your data stores will still be here. Okay. So that was basically about the storage, storage DRS as well. So that basically brings me to the end of storage as a module. Doubts, confusion, questions. Okay. I need to go somewhere today. So I'll wrap up the class quickly. So let's meet on next weekend and we'll start off with the ESXi option. There are too many other things that I need to talk about. So I will be talking about those. Any questions anyone has?
Excuse me.
Mhm.
If any existing storage DRS configuration is any wrong, can we delete entire configuration and fresh configuration can we do?
There is no way to back it up. Okay, like in distributed switch, you had the option of backing it up. There is nothing that you can back up the storage DRS configuration. So over
Okay.
here, you just have very basic configurations, not too much. You can
Okay.
just apply the basic configurations, take a screenshot. You can delete the storage DRS and you can create a new one as per your new configuration. Or you can change the existing one also, no? I mean,
Okay.
all those options you can look into.
Okay. Modification also available.
Of course, I
Oh,
was showing you all the options, no? You can edit and you can make all the changes,
yes.
whatever you want to.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else has any questions?
Yeah, hi.
Hey, go for it.
Yeah, like during the vMotion, if we don't have the shared storage and for example, if VM1 is having the data store one, and if we move from ESXi1 to ESXi2,
Hmm.
uh, and do we need to move the compute and storage both to the
Yes,
other?
if you do not have shared storage, you will have to migrate the entire compute and the storage as well. In the next weekend, I'll show you all the vMotion functionalities on how you can move from within the cluster, different data store, different vCenters, and I'll talk about all those things.
And we come back again and to the VM1 again, then we return back to, we move the VM to from ES62 to the one, then what happens, like again we need to put back the same data store, or
Yeah, I'll talk about it on the next weekend. If you have shared
okay,
storage or if you do not have shared storage, so what you can do, what you cannot do. I'll talk about all
okay,
those options.
okay, and one more query is like if we have two storages, like for example one's KC and then SSD, If anyone is getting 100% full, and if we don't select the notification options, how to manage it?
I mean, see, if you have not put any, I'm hearing my voice. Can you go on mute? I'm hearing my voice. Yeah. So what would happen basically is that if you did not put any notifications, if you go to the 100% mark at the data store, everything will freeze because there is no storage available. Your operating system will freeze, nothing would work, the application would not respond, RDP, SSH, nothing would work. Okay, so it is your responsibility as VMware admin that you do not breach 80% mark. Okay, you be in that limit. If somehow you have missed it, if you have gone to 100%, your data store is completely full, this is what will happen, your VMs will not respond.
Okay, like in case if we are dealing with some clients and activate this type of notification, and if we come across, can we enable it halfway through?
Yes, I'll talk about, yes, you can absolutely do it. Next weekend, I'll talk about alarms, and I'll tell you that how you can apply alarms, and how you can be notified about it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a good evening. Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else before we wrap up the call?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. I'll see you on next weekend. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye. Good night.